Hello guys, today I would like to show you how to drain transmission fluid from the transmission and the torque converter. Alright, to begin I start off by two oil drain type of containers. I wipe them down, to make them clean and stuff, and the reason I do that is so that I could see exactly what color my oil is, especially with this gray one. This is the one I actually use for draining that transmission fluid out of the actual transmission. I'll be using the black one for the torque converter. It makes no difference to me on that one, but it does help having two buckets, because you're gonna have two places where the oil is gonna be coming from. You could probably get away with one, but I like to use two. I prefer actually this color here because it gives me a much better look at the actual transmission fluid. I could see whether it's dirty or not, because with the black it's just going to make it that much darker. It's going to look a lot more nastier. You cannot really tell the true color of the transmission fluid. So for the torque converter, of course, you're going to need to rotate harmonic balancer using this 27-inch socket. And I'm using this cobalt type of bar here, as a wrench. This will help me rotate the engine. And the way I actually rotate it, I actually lay underneath where the torque converter is, and try to actually rotate it by hand and watch for that for the torque converter fill plug to show up. I'm going to show you that in a second, what it looks like, in case some of you guys don't know. And for the actual transmission, all the bolts, including the torque converter, uses this T30 type of socket here on the end. So that's what I'll be using to remove the transmission fill plug, and all the other bolts to remove the transmission pan to do the seal and the oil filter. Okay, what I have here is a brand new transmission oil filter. I got this from Mercedes. I forgot how much it was. And here is another Mercedes part. This is the 13-pin connector. It is definitely advised to replace the 13-pin connector whenever you change in your transmission fluid. Due to the seals on these things going bad, they have improved the design, somewhat. I'm not sure how well they work anymore, but these things are a common problem for transmission actually leaking oil. And you do not want this seal going bad. This is a very cheap part, between $7 and $13. Definitely replace this part, because if this leaks, your wires, of course, this is going to be like plugged in to the transmission like this, and this is the only piece you're going to actually end up seeing. The way you disconnect your wires is by rotating this little plastic knob. I'm sure a lot of you guys know this anyways. So inside, as you can see, there's like a little bolt. It's a 7mm bolt, or a screw. I mean, it's so small, it does not even show on that side. So basically just remove this thing. Once you remove the wiring, you could easily push it out of there. I mean, if you want, you could just pry it with a screwdriver, just little by little, pull it out. This should come out. Make sure you have removed all of the seals. There's supposed to be 2 seals on it. So if you have removed them, that's good. And go ahead and put another one in there. Of course, if you're a little bit more mechanically inclined, I recommend you actually don't install this yet. Remove the valve body and go ahead and clean the speed sensor and the actual conductor plate. And the speed sensor is one piece with the conductor plate. Just clean that stuff up. Inspect your solenoids for any kind of dirt and any kind of like metal deposits on there, so everything's going to be shifting and working nicely for hundreds of thousands of miles to come. Of course, if you clean those things and take care of it and everything. And always I advise drain the torque converter fluid. I know it's kind of like inconvenient to try to drain that torque converter fluid, because you have to rotate your idler harmonic balancer in order to actually get that bolt visible enough so you could actually undo it and drain all the oil. That's the only inconvenience of it, but everything is within reach. I mean, it's not that difficult. It's just a matter of if you want to do it right or not. Even some dealerships, they don't change your torque converter fluid unless you pay extra. They consider an oil change a lot of times, and some may be different from others. Some may agree, some may disagree with me, but from personal experience, I have talked to some of the dealerships that change transmission fluid. This is before I did my own transmission fluid, and they told me they just changed the filter, the seal, and they changed transmission fluid about 4.5-5 quarts of oil. That's all they change. That's what's included in your transmission oil change. And once you actually drain the torque converter, they consider that a flush. I really don't see how that's a flush, because you just basically removed all the oil from there. I guess the way they're thinking, it's a flush because you got the whole oil out of the system. So that does make a little bit of sense. But I think it's the right thing to do, just go ahead and get rid of all the oil. Even though most likely, I mean, if you're changing it every 30,000 miles like you're supposed to, maybe just changing your transmission fluid would be enough. But let's face it, some of us drive for 60 and 70 and 100,000 miles and don't change your oil. Then what do you expect? Of course you're gonna need a flush. You're gonna need to change all your oil. But I'm kind of thinking, you know, drive about 60,000 miles and change your transmission fluid. I mean, if you can, do it sooner. Getting back to the 13-pin connector switch, why you need to change this piece? Because if you don't change it, and if it does leak on you, if you're one of those unlucky guys, what's going to happen is all the transmission oil pressure is going to be like so much. I mean, it really is a lot of pressure inside, and if the seals are bad, it's going to make it right past your you know, right past this 13-pin connector plug, and it's gonna go through the wiring, up the wiring, all the way underneath your driver's seat where your transmission module sits, and you're gonna end up having a wet transmission module with transmission fluid on all the connectors, causing your transmission most likely to go in limp mode. And that's one of the main causes why transmission is in limp mode. The other one being that your speed sensors on the conductor plate are so dirty, your transmission cannot tell what speed you're in. So it just puts you in first or second gear into the limp mode. I have seen both. It should only place you in second gear. That way you could at least move a little bit. But I had a situation where mine was completely in first gear. I'm telling you guys. And I was only able to drive at 30 miles an hour. If I drove above 30 miles an hour, my RPM gauge would go above 4,000. So that was, you know, too much. You know, you could definitely break your engine driving at those speeds. But anyways, yeah, that's just a little bit of advice. I'm going to go ahead and remove that transmission plug from the bottom of the transmission pan using my T30 here. It should come out pretty easy. I tighten those things just hand tight, just enough to where they tight. You know, do not over tighten it because you're gonna end up stripping you know, the actual stuff here. It is kind of tight here underneath, but I would like to show you how to remove this fill plug here. Yep, and it's really light. One of my Sprinters had this thing so tight, it is actually kind of like stripped it as well. Yeah, there it goes. Got my hands a little dirty. That kind of looks blackish. I'm gonna get out from underneath here and actually check out the color, see how black it is. This is actually changing it after 30,000 miles. And if this does look kind of dirty, this might be because last time I ignored changing my transmission fluid for I don't know how many miles, possibly between 90 and 100,000. So right now it might be less or close to 30,000. Wow, this is kind of strange. This is not even the color of the transmission fluid. Interesting. It's very interesting. This might be a cause of one of my problems that I've been facing. Sometimes my transmission, rarely, but at first it was a little bit more often. What it was doing is, it was actually, if I come to the stoplight, and if you guys have this issue, you know, it's probably worth watching this video and to see exactly what's wrong inside of the transmission, because I will be taking it apart. However, taking it apart is going to be in another video. Most likely this video is going to be followed by me actually removing the valve body and the 13-pin connector switch. The reason I'm going to remove the valve body, I would like to see what kind of condition the speed sensor is. And last time I did not remove the speed sensor, so I am not sure if it's dirty, if it's not dirty, because I usually like to change it. But last time the weather was bad and I did not want to get any water inside. So yeah, this is really odd, it being like this. What I also want to end up doing is I want to get all the oil out, all of it. And I want to end up measuring approximately how much oil I actually drained out of there, because it could be a low oil type of issue. But anyways, I think what I'm going to try to explain to you guys right now is what's going on with my transmission. At this point, my transmission has 1,050,000 miles on it. I've been taking care of it myself for all these years. But when I come to the stoplight, and this was happening in the winter time, so it's not happening right now, so it might be because of the weather. But basically I started taking off and I'm revving my engine. It's not going anywhere. I'm just stuck at the light. So you know, I just keep hitting the gas lightly, just kind of like revving it just a little bit, and then boom, it engages, and then I could drive again. So I come to the next stoplight, it doesn't go. I rev it, it doesn't go, so I park it, stick it back in drive. It's not going. I park it again, stick it in drive. It's not going. Then I'm actually downshifting it, upshifting it using the electronic shifter, and then it engages. It starts going. So this happens. So then I'm thinking, okay, yeah, not to stop. So might as well get on the highway and drive, because I was not home at the time. So the idea was to make it home 1,100 miles, drive home all the way from Kansas City in the winter. So what I ended up doing is I actually got on the highway and I started driving. But before I did that, I let it cool off for about a couple hours. It was not that difficult since it was so freezing outside. Like, it was cold. It was like freezing temperatures. There was like ice in the road. There was a lot of issue with the traffic and stuff that was going on. So I started driving on the highway and everything was fine. I drove for 100 miles and it's fine. So I drove for 200, it's fine. And then I noticed that there was traffic up ahead. And as soon as I started driving about 20 miles an hour, problems started happening again. I mean, it got out of the gear again, like while I'm driving. So I'm like revving my gas, it's not even going. Luckily, there's an exit in front of me. So I take an exit, I start rolling, it again engages. So I end up parking in the shopping center that was off that exit, and I turn the engine off, let it cool off, let the traffic go away, and again I start my engine up, I start going. It's driving fine, you know, there was no traffic, and I was able to drive home like that, avoiding every possible traffic possible. And as long as I was on the highway, it was good. So here's what I was thinking, okay? And at that time, you know, there's only so much you could do, you know. I mean, one of the things could be wrong is obviously low oil. Low oil is going to do that. But since I just did transmission fluid recently and there was no leaks, you know, anywhere, I always check for this stuff. Every time I stop, I look underneath. Did it leak? Is everything good? And I do have the transmission fluid level checker. I just end up not even checking the transmission fluid level. So the next thing I'm kind of thinking, okay, maybe torque converter is going bad, because after all, it's 1,050,000 miles. It's original transmission, original parts, except the conductor plate. So maybe torque converter, possibly a solenoid that is being stuck due to some kind of, you know, like dirt getting on it. It gets stuck and then it gets unstuck and it's driving. So it could be that. Also could be the valve body, because, you know, that's being, you know, the same thing, kind of like maybe some of this old, you know, like transmission wearing stuff parts got on there, and it's causing a problem. Another thing was, I'm thinking clutches. I never changed the clutches. I mean, my transmission is shifting file open till now. Like, it just drives good. Like, it shifts nice and soft. The only thing I'm getting is the third gear when it shifts. It basically it's a longer gear. It goes like and then shifts in, you know. But it's just it happens so quick that it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like hard to even like notice. It's definitely not an issue. So if I'm going at a highway speed, it's all good. The main concern to me was that the transmission would just completely get out of the gear, and I'm just like revving my gas and just not going anywhere. That's the main concern. Like with all those other issues, I could drive with it just fine. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. But now we get to see exactly what's going on with the transmission. As if I'm draining this oil, I'm going to drain the torque converter, and I will drain it inside of that gray bucket. I'm going to place the black bucket underneath the transmission. So if in case any other droplets will actually start dropping, they're going to drop in a black bucket. I would like to see the exact color of complete transmission fluid. And then what I'm going to end up doing, I'm going to remove the transmission oil pan right now and let that all drain into the gray bucket as well. And stick the black bucket underneath the valve body to catch any other residue. So it's going to be interesting to see. Low fluid level, too much maybe metal, that's kind of like wearing off, but you guys could see this is kind of like black. This almost seems like I never changed my transmission fluid, and I do. Just to kind of let you guys know, when I changed it last time, with avoiding the change for about 90 to 100,000 miles, what I did notice was I have 3 magnets inside of my transmission pan. There was originally only 1. I have added 2 more from the speakers that I had lying around. There was so much black metal deposit on those, plus there was copper shavings. And copper shavings is nothing new to me. That's just, it's been going on ever since I had 650,000 miles. Of course, it is a concern if you see copper shavings inside of your transmission. If you start seeing that, that means the inside part where your clutches go, there's these little copper bushings, and they're kind of like in the middle of these gears. They're starting to wear out, and you know, they're round shaped like copper bushings. They kind of look like they sort of look like round copper washers is what they look like. So the inside portion of this copper washer, sort of like that I'm calling bushings, because it is sort of like in between the parts, so it, I guess it, since it's a soft metal, it helps things to be kind of like softer, you know, inside of the transmission. So inside it starts wearing out and it starts looking like it's oval. And the problem with that is, if it's going to happen like with a lot of them, I mean, the inside transmission parts is going to start like kind of like vibrating maybe, and kind of like spinning the wrong way, because it has to spin the drive shaft, and that portion is going to be like completely wore out. Of course, it's no surprise. I'm sure a lot of you guys that's watching this, you don't have a transmission that's got 1,000,000 miles on it. So it's probably interesting to see what kind of condition this one is. After all, I drove for this many miles on it. I'm not the original owner. So, but I was told by the Mercedes when I got the new engine that it was the original transmission and the engine inside when my engine blew out at 844,000. So if the Mercedes tells me that's original transmission, I'm going to stick with the original transmission. But we never know. It could have been changed. But I'll tell you one thing is, when I bought it at 650,000 miles, I did have transmission problems. It was constantly, as I was driving, it was constantly shifting into 4th gear, sometimes 3rd gear. And I could see that like on a speedometer. I'm like, well, I didn't hit the shifter, or did I? So I would put it right back. I would shift it to the right, actually, put it back into 5th gear. And guess what? In a few seconds, it shifts down again. So I'm thinking, this is weird. You know, it's shifting down on its own. Why is it doing that? So how to solve this issue? Because every time I would shift it while I'm driving, it wants to go back to the position that it shifted back. So the solution to that problem was to park, put it in park, put it in drive. It fixes the situation, you know, and then you could drive again. It's not going to show up for another 30,000 miles. So with that, it was not a huge issue. But at that time, I wasn't sure how often the transmission fluid was changed, what kind of transmission fluid they used. All I could tell you guys, since I've been owning it, I've been always changing the torque converter fluid, and I've been changing the transmission fluid altogether. So I started using Valvoline Max Life. I'm going to show you what that looks like. This is full synthetic Valvoline Max Life. ATF type of fluid. Of course, the Mercedes recommends that you use ATF 134, and you can if you're really concerned, especially if you got a new vehicle. You don't want to award your warranty, but if you're like me and you got a vehicle that's above 100,000 miles, this is highly recommended. Look at this. As I flip this bottle right over, here's what it tells you. You got all these different transmissions that you could use this in. And of course over there, the third one from the bottom says Mercedes-Benz Neg 1 transmission. Go ahead, look it up. It's going to tell you that this is Neg 1 transmission, is a 5-speed hydraulic transmission. So this can be used in it. You know, of course, maybe some people disagree with me, but you know, who would you want to listen, you know, to somebody that's been using it since 650,000 miles and I still have a working transmission, or somebody that hasn't drove that much? Of course, if you've been, you know, using a, you know, ATF 134, I mean, it's perfect. You know, it's not going to be any better than, I mean, it's not going to be any worse. Possibly it's going to be better. So if you could afford to spend a little extra, go ahead. But other than that, there is some other fluids out there. I don't use them. They're going to work. But there's one that I don't recommend you use. There's one that's by SuperTech. I believe it says ATF plus 4. I've seen guys use that. I don't like it personally, but it could be a preference. Plus it does not say that you could use that oil, and this one does. So I'd rather use this stuff. I did some research before starting using this oil, and a lot of people told me that it's the same thing basically, because Mercedes and Chrysler, when they had their really close relationship, you could call it, you know, partnership or marriage between the two companies, because Daimler Chrysler Corporation and Mercedes, I mean, they're building sprinters together and, you know, all this other good stuff. So Chrysler and Dodge, of course, they started using this Mercedes Neg 1 transmission in their vehicles. Chrysler Pacifica has it. You know, you got the Jeep Liberty that has this transmission, the Sebring, possibly some others. But they started using the same transmission. And there's some other Jeeps that's diesel. They're even using the Mercedes engine that we have in our Sprinter. I haven't seen one, but somebody told me that there is also that as well. And of course, you could see that it's that transmission. If you look underneath those vehicles, and I did before, I looked under the Jeep Liberty. That's the only one that I have checked. And guess what? That's like one of the cheapest Jeeps that you could get out there. And you look and you could see that, yeah, it's got a 13-pin connector, just like the Sprinters that we have. Obviously, it's using a 5-speed hydraulic transmission in the Jeep. So there's a lot of options out there when you're trying to rebuild your transmission. It's possible that you could use those transmission from the junkyard, and most likely they're going to be broken with a lot less miles than some of these Sprinters have. So if somebody wants to go that route, you could check it out. You know, I may try to do that one day. Guys, this is transmission fluid. I've never seen an oil that looks dirtier. I mean, it is brown. This is for the first time ever that I've seen this color on this Sprinter here that I'm changing. Man, sometimes I pull that transmission fluid out at 60,000 miles. It smelled fresh. I mean, it was awesome. So over here, I'm not sure, but I bet it kind of has a smell to it. I haven't smelled it yet, but I don't know. Most likely torque converter causing this, but who knows? I am not an expert when it comes to this kind of stuff. I know some stuff. But this here is possibly because there's some kind of slippage going on. Maybe I don't know. I'm not gonna say too much because, you know, if somebody knows exactly what's causing this type of black oil, leave it in the comments below. I would like to know exactly what's going on. But of course, I'll be removing that transmission. Most likely we're not gonna really notice much. I mean, you know, how would you really, unless you really know what you're looking for. The only thing that I would like to see is how dirty is the speed sensor, how dirty are my magnets, is there copper shavings inside. But this looks to me kind of like something's slipping, something's burning, and to cause this type of stuff to happen. I mean, it's completely dark, and the reason I was using this gray can is so that I could see what color it is. This is horrible. This is definitely, in my book, I need a new transmission, which I already have. I've removed from the other Sprinter. That transmission is good. It only has 430,000 miles on it, but it's going to be definitely better than what I have here. I have smelled the oil, and it smells smoky. Kind of like the smoky flavor. Metally, smoky smell to it. It definitely does not smell like fresh transmission fluid. Yeah, not good. I'm going to call one of my experts and find out what does he think with this transmission fluid being this color, because I'm sure this is going to point to something immediately. There's got to be a huge clue, it being black like this. Since it's my first time, there's a first time for everything, and this is how I learned everything about my Sprinter, about the engine. Taking stuff apart is just by doing it. Most likely, if I'm not a mechanic now, I will be in no time. You know, it's not that I'm trying to make that into a profession. I'm an expediter and also a businessman. This is something I do to save money and to do it right, because I haven't found anybody that does it right yet, unless you take it to the dealer, and even they're probably gonna mess it up, but they're gonna charge you a lot of money. So anyways, I'm gonna let you guys know. Hey guys, I kind of know what the problem is. I just spoke to a really good expert. His name is Jeremy. He is from Dallas, Texas, I believe, or somewhere in Texas. I got his number from the internet a while back, but he's a super nice guy. If you speak to him, he's going to be straight up and honest and tell you exactly what's going on with your transmission and not try to rip you off. You know, he's not even going to try to get you in his shop so you could spend the money. He'll recommend what the best choice for you will be. So he told me in this situation, he says there's clutches that's inside of the torque converter, and there's clutches that's inside of the transmission. About the transmission clutches, I knew that they're there, but the torque converter clutches, this is a whole new territory for me. Since it's a metal piece, I cannot see what's inside. So those clutches are also wearing out. So whenever you're replacing clutches in your transmission, most likely you're gonna need to replace your torque converter. Just go ahead and, you know, get both of those things, because both of them are probably pretty worn. The only thing that's going to cause this oil to be this black is the clutches. And that was sort of like my rough estimate. I was thinking, you know, either torque converter or clutches, but I guess I was sort of right in both situations, even though this is common sense. Apparently both of those have clutches. So there you go. You know, replacing this transmission, I would have not been able to do it properly without putting in a torque converter, a good one, at least a good used one, which I'll be putting in right now, since that oil does not look like this. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and drain the torque converter fluids now. Before I do that, I would like to let you guys know that if you need the phone number of Jeremy, that's over there in Texas, that knows his stuff about transmissions, he rebuilds them, services them, I will leave his phone number in the description below. So if you guys need an expert to work on your transmission, you could call him. Hey guys, to remove the torque converter bolt, you first need to pop these plastic pieces out. I'm gonna show you where they're located. That's the holes you need to pull your bolt out of. Alright, I put it in a better position now. Now that you could see through the little holes in the transmission housing, you could see that little bolt. It's a T30, and it wasn't visible like that. I wish I was that lucky when I removed these two pieces. You'll actually need to rotate your harmonic balancer. That bolt that takes a 27mm socket, you're gonna need to rotate it until you could actually see it. You could either get a buddy to rotate it for you, kind of slowly while you watch, or you could do it yourself like I did, by laying and having my legs through the front underneath the engine and stuff. It was facing out of there, so I was able to grip the handle and rotate it. So there it is. Now it's time to drain it. Alright, I got my wrench on it. I already got it loose. It was actually quite tight, and I know I'm the one that tightened it that tight. Maybe all that heat and everything caused it to be even more tighter. I am not sure, but it wasn't fun. I want to make sure my oil pan is facing correctly, because it might start flowing more towards the bottom. Yeah, there you go. I want to catch as much of this fluid as possible. Holding a camera like this is definitely making the job a lot more harder, since I can only use one hand. I'm trying to separate the wrench. It's not spinning that easy now. Alright. It's starting to drip now. Guys, this is a very small bolt. Try not to drop it inside of the housing. If you do, it's going to be a pain in the neck to try to pull it out. However, if you do drop it in there, a little advice that if you're gonna go in front of the housing where the oil pan is, there's supposed to be a plastic piece over there that's covering the hole in the housing, so you could actually remove the torque converter bolts. If you do drop it in there, open that housing up and try to fish it out with a magnet or something. It is magnetic, at least, because out of those little holes it's going to be a lot more difficult. As you can see, the oil is super black. Definitely I'm having the issues with the clutches, and I'm even thinking even more so in the torque converter than the rest of the clutches. Of course, probably both of them are causing it, but you know, for the vehicle completely to be sitting still and not moving from the light, I know the clutch has got to be bad in order for it not to move. But the torque converter pumps all the oil to the transmission, so it almost feels like the torque converter is trying to pump it, but it's slipping because of all those clutches, and it's not really doing its job properly. But that's just a theory. But the expert told me it's the clutches, so they both have clutches, the transmission and the actual torque converter. So I'm gonna go ahead and climb out of here, let the oil do its thing. Alright, and here is the torque converter. For those of you that want to know what bolt I was removing, there it is right there. There's only one of them on here, so approximately was facing down when I was removing it. It's kind of interesting that I've actually heard somebody told me there is no, you could put the torque converter in any way. There's like no wrong way of putting it in, but there's only one way of putting it in. You cannot put it in wrong way. Look at the back. This is quite heavy. It's metal. You see here, it's kind of hard to get my hand on it. Okay, as you can see in the back, there's these bolts. This is the way it's being held to that gear that's attached to the engine. So this is the way you hold a torque converter with this 6 bolts here. To install the torque converter, it is best to always install it facing down, like an upside down Mercedes sign, I call it. After all, it's a Mercedes, so install it like this. Of course, it needs to face the engine that way, but so you guys could see it, this is the way it needs to be installed. And the reason for that is there is like these little grooves where these things go into. You need to have one of those things facing down as well. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to install the torque converter properly. In one of my videos, I actually show those grooves when I was removing the torque converter. This is the torque converter from the other Sprinter that I have, and this is the one I'm going to be putting in it. It's a used torque converter, but it's probably a lot better. Well, it's actually twice as better than mine, because this engine only had 430,000 miles on it, and mine has 1,050,000. That transmission fluid is all drained. There's just I won't be filling it up this time, but I do want to show to some of you guys where the transmission fill tube is. In case some of you guys don't know, I'm pretty sure most of you guys are aware of where the transmission fill tube is. This one here removes, well, actually, I have never removed that one. It does not remove. It used to actually remove on my old engine, but this is a Mercedes engine that I purchased. It looks super dirty now. I never clean it. Some of you guys might be thinking, why? But I'm kind of superstitious about something, and I'm not superstitious about anything. Except all these sensors here, I don't want to get none of them wet. I'm pretty sure they're protected pretty well from all this water and stuff, but I will not clean it because right now no check engine light is on. I don't see a reason to start one, you know. Every once in a while my O2 sensor light will come on, but that's a second O2 sensor in there that I replaced. So right now the engine's running fine. There's no malfunctions. I'm not going to be washing it. Once it starts having problems, and I need to dig in, then yeah, I'll wash it, that time. But anyways, it's not gonna do any kind of malfunctioning. So I have actually, it's probably not gonna sound that good, but I actually never check my oil level in the transmission since I bought the engine. Of course, since the transmission oil is not part of the engine, it's not a huge concern to me because I'm not gonna do any damage to the engine. I do change my oil in the transmission regularly, and since it was an old transmission in here anyways, I definitely plan to replace it either with a remanufactured transmission. This time I'm just going to use a rebuilt transmission that only has 430,000 miles. This engine has now 200,000 miles. I think it's going to be a good balance between the two. These transmissions are supposed to last a very long time. I mean, definitely you could get 1,000,000 miles out of one. As you could see, I got 1,050,000 out of mine, and it would probably continue if you rebuild it, which you always need to kind of, think about stuff like replacing your clutches and replacing a torque converter. And that's what I would do. I would just replace a torque converter and replace the clutches and see if it needed like new bearings in the transmission or, valve body being rebuilt. Then I would go ahead and get those things rebuilt. Most likely, I might do that eventually. But to remove this transmission oil tube here, it's kind of dirty here with all the dust, but this is kind of like red on most of the engines. You could kind of see it. It's a little insert. You need to push it out. You could push it out through the front and through the back using a very thin screwdriver. Once you push it out, then you could actually pull this little thing out of here. Mercedes engines, for some reason, they don't come with a transmission dipstick, so you could actually measure it. You would need to actually buy one from the Mercedes. So it's not out of the ordinary that I haven't checked the transmission fluid. It doesn't come with one. I do have the transmission dipstick. I'm going to show you what it looks like. A transmission dipstick. Look how long it is. It's definitely longer than some of the dipsticks that you would notice. But it does have places here where it tells you maximum or minimum. This little temperature reading here at what temperature the engine is, to get a correct reading. I recommend definitely checking the transmission fluid at the engine, having it, like just drive it or something, or at least have it running long enough to where the engine is going to be normal operating temperature, and keep the engine running when you're checking. You'll need to, of course, remove this plastic piece first. Insert this dipstick all the way to the transmission till it's going to hit the bottom, and only then you're going to start getting some kind of reading out of it. This is why they're so long like this. Mercedes sells one for $80. You could pick one up on eBay or some other site, probably around like 20 bucks, maybe even cheaper. I think I paid close to $20 for mine. So I always have it with me just in case, because if you lose your transmission fluid on the road and you're not sure if you lost some, this is the only way to tell. Due to these 13-pin connectors leaking as often as they are, it's nice to have one of these around. I've let a lot of guys borrow mine because they don't have it whenever I'm expediting at the truck stops, so that they could see their oil level. So there you have it. This is gonna conclude the video. Well, actually no, I'm gonna tell you one more thing, since you know, the video is actually called draining the transmission fluid, but if you want to actually refill your transmission fluid, it's very simple to refuel it. So all you need to do is, you know, get yourself a nice funnel that would fit inside of this tube here, something plastic and sturdy that's not going to fill out, and slowly add about 8.5 quarts in there. Probably after the 5th or 6th quart of oil that you put in here, it's gonna be kind of like draining a little slow in there, and that's because transmission is gonna fill up with oil and it's still not inside of the torque converter. So you would need to actually pump it, you know, using your shifter to try to actually get more in there. But with 6.5 quarts of oil, it's already a little bit safe. It's not going to be dry. Just put your key inside of the ignition. First, try to put it in drive, neutral, park, drive, neutral, parked, shifter first, second, third, you know, like all the way to the bottom and, you know, and up and stuff. So then come back again. Don't start it up yet. Come back again and try to see if you could fill a little bit more oil. If it's still not going down, go ahead and start the engine up. Start shifting through all the gears inside. Shut it back off, and then go ahead and add some more oil in there. Once you put at least 8 to 9 quarts of oil, most likely it's going to take about 8.5 if you have drained torque converter in the engine, in the transmission and the torque converter together, and got the oil out of the oil pan with a new filter. Most likely it's 8.5 quarts of oil that it's going to take. However, this transmission probably takes a little bit more than that, probably like 9.5 or something. But because oil is going to be in all your oil fill tubes and everywhere else in the transmission, including the valve body, if you're not removing it, most likely that oil is in there. So you're not going to need to really worry about that. So yeah, that concludes the video. Thank you guys for watching another one of my videos. I will not be removing the valve body in this video, but I will be removing the complete torque converter and the transmission in the upcoming video. And then once I remove the transmission and install the new one here, that I will make a video about me taking the transmission, putting it like on a table, and go ahead and start taking it apart to see what exactly went wrong where. The only thing that I'm not going to be taking apart is the actual torque converter, because it is welded together, you know, so it's going to be quite impossible for me to take it apart. However, I've heard of places that do rebuild those things. I'm not sure how good they rebuild them, but anyways, I will not get into that subject right now. So thank you guys. Come back next time. Please like and subscribe my videos. I do appreciate you watching them, and I hope somebody learned something from it. Thank you. Bye-bye.